for me, the key distinction is a melancholy story is the world sucks and you're going to die, so you might as well die on your feet. And a depressing story is the world sucks and you're going to die. You might as well not embarrass yourself by trying to stand up. And, to take two sort of examples of the same author creating what I consider a melancholy and a depressing work, Aronofsky made Requiem for a Dream, which I consider a sort of extreme example of depressing, and made The Wrestler, which is an extreme example of melancholy. So many people say The Wrestler is a depressing story. It's about this loser Hulk Hogan pastiche who's now working as a deli clerk and his life sucks. He lives in a trailer. He's estranged from his family. He's, a junkie and addicted to painkillers and he's using steroids. And in the end of the movie, he can't mature past being a wrestler and he dies in the ring. Spoiler, now that I've spoiled the whole movie for you.
Thanks.
He dies in the ring, jumping off the top rope, doing the move that defined him as a wrestler to the applause of the crowd. To me, the actual ending of that movie, and this goes back to my flying, falling, right? He dies in flight, uh, embodying this larger than life role that had been the high point of his life. It's true, he was not able to mature past this and didn't become a lawyer and sit at a desk all day till he died with sciatica or something. He died of abusing painkillers and jumping off the top rope. But that moment, it doesn't take any. I have no question in my mind that he died with a smile on his face. You could just as easily have made the same movie and he dies before going into the ring because he overdoses on painkillers. And it would be a completely different movie that would just basically be saying his efforts to strive back to getting to that point when he meant something to people and meant something to himself was all a futility that was just an excuse to abuse drugs or whatever. And that would be a depressing message. And to me, I'm like, I anyone who's played these games has a guess at how dark my ideations can be. I am very worried about the state of the world, um, and whether humanity is capable of meeting the challenges that we're facing, whether the way we'll meet the challenges that we're facing aren't going to be awful in and of themselves, and what are we going to lose by trying to cope with these catastrophes. I'm very worried about those things, and so to me, um, games are always educational, right? They are particularly powerful in building patterns of thought and action in people who play games. And so I recoil at the idea of doing a depressing game because I think all of us need the message to stand on your feet, not to die on your knees, even though we may all end up dying on our knees. And it's not so great to die on your feet either. But if there is any hope of anything other than dying on your feet, it's to get on your feet because you're not going to survive on your knees waiting for the shit of the world to drown you. You're going to survive because you're resisting it until the end. And, you Martin Luther, who certainly said a lot of things I would not agree with, and he is a complicated figure. But there's a quote that I'm not going to get right, and maybe he didn't even say it, but I believe he said, when asked, if you believed the world was going to end tomorrow, what would you do? And his answer was, I would plant a tree. Um, we live in a world where people people still plant trees, but they plant trees that are going to grow as fast as possible because they want to have the tree in their own lifetime. People tend not to plant oaks, which take generations to grow, because they don't think in terms of a future that will extend past the metaphorical tomorrow. And what I think Luther was saying there is even, uh, you know, uh, in Watchmen, Rorschach says, even in the face of Armageddon, never compromise. Well, Luther is also saying a version of that, which is even in the face of the end of the world, continue to live as if what you're doing has meaning. And that is, as long as that is there, it's never truly depressing. The notion that there is dignity even in defeat, as long as you meet the defeat in a dignified way, is one of the great gifts of philosophy and religion to the world, right? The idea that all that matters is whether you win or lose is one of the most corrosive things that a person can internalize, because it can certainly drive you to excel, but it will also, at the critical juncture, it will fail you in one of two ways. Either you will lose because, as Dr. Seuss says in Oh, the Places You Go, sometimes you lose, right? You're not, and when you lose, if you believe that everything was about winning and losing, you have nothing left to fall back on. But it can also be corrosive in that in the pursuit of winning, you lose sight of what the goal really was, right? The goal was not the winning itself. It was the thing that winning was supposed to enable you to do, or give you, or enable others to do. And so I just think there is some value in this message, that it's actually about how you perform and not the outcome of it. And so that was, in those games, it's in every game I do, is, you know, they're all the games are either post-apocalyptic or pre-apocalyptic, but there is overwhelming all of them, from the first Game Boy game until Fallen Gods, is this sense that uh, the world is either ended and you just have to make do as best you can, or the world is falling apart and you have to figure out how to cope with the world's falling apart, or the world is on the cusp of falling apart. And what are you going to do in the face of that? Are you going to indulge yourself in, you know, getting drunk and gambling, or are you going to go and try to do something creative and constructive? And all of the games are, you know, in different stages of maturity in my own life. And the answer to that, Strangeland is like a middle-aged person's game, right? It's a game about, a loss and the things that you've lost along the way. Infinity, which I made when I was 18 or whatever, is a game. It's a young man's notion of, you shrug off everything and with a heroic gesture, and everything is noble sacrifice this, and defiant gesture that. But both of them, I think, are driving at the same melancholy rather than depression.
I think that's a great place to end with this message because I don't think we'll top that.